The afternoon quiet at Juniper and Ash, a sleek, high-end fusion spot in Santa Monica, settled in after the lunch rush. The kind of place where a seared scallop cost $34 and a 6:45 p.m. Tuesday reservation took 2 weeks to snag. Danielle Harper stood near the gleaming bar, absently wiping down an already spotless tray. Her black button-up and apron, worn like a second skin for the past 3 years, were a uniform she inhabited with effortless professionalism. She was quick, efficient, always pleasant but never overtly saccharine, earning her the quiet respect of regulars and the nickname The Wall from some colleagues. Nothing seemed to rattle her, not demanding customers, not spilled drinks, not even the rude patrons who refused eye contact. Yet, what was about to unfold wasn't about broken rules or bad service. It was about something far more insidious, lurking beneath the veneer of polished perfection. Her phone vibrated once, a small tremor against her thigh. Danielle glanced down, Popo, her grandmother, calling from Taipei. An unusual occurrence, as Popo only called for emergencies or birthdays. A prickle of concern, light as a feather, brushed against Danielle's calm. She discreetly stepped just behind the service wall, nestled between the towering wine rack and the humming espresso machine, and answered. "Wei," she murmured softly, her voice shifting seamlessly into Mandarin. A few quick sentences, hushed and respectful, exchanging reassurances about her grandmother's health, something about a doctor's visit, a medication mix-up. It was no more than 30 seconds. Then she hung up, tucked the phone away, and smoothly transitioned back to clearing a nearby corner table, her internal ripple of concern settling back into the quiet flow of her shift. She didn't know he was listening. Charles Remington III, ensconced in the exclusive VIP section at Table 7, sipped a neat Japanese whiskey. He wasn't just a regular, he was the regular, a tech investor, a local power player, a man who meticulously curated his environment. He liked control, consistency, and servers who knew to refill his water with precisely 2 ice cubes, never 3. Danielle had waited on him at least 15 times, always seamlessly, never an issue. Until now. That day, something shifted in his gaze. He watched her not with curiosity, but with a palpable suspicion, a flicker of something almost akin to disgust crossing his face so fleetingly, you'd miss it if you blinked. He said not a single word. But the next morning, when Danielle arrived for her shift, her name was conspicuously absent from the schedule. Her world, in that instant, flipped upside down. Danielle Harper wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. At 27, she'd mastered the art of blending in while consistently excelling at her job. 5 days a week, she arrived early at Juniper and Ash, her hair neatly pulled back in a low puff, wearing only chapstick and perhaps a touch of concealer if the dark circles under her eyes were too loud. She kept her head down, her eyes up, and her mouth closed, speaking only when greeting a guest or fulfilling a request. This disciplined silence was a shield, a way to navigate a world that often made quick, inaccurate judgments. Outside of work, Danielle's life revolved around a rent-controlled 1-bedroom apartment off Pico Boulevard, filled with plants she talked to and a laptop brimming with half-written poems. Her free time was devoted to Popo, her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents passed away in a car accident when Danielle was just 7. Popo had taken Danielle to Taiwan as a child, nurturing her with green onion pancakes, shared soap operas, and the melodic rhythm of Mandarin, taught alongside love and strict discipline. By the time Danielle was 13, they had moved back to the States, but her Mandarin remained. It was the language she used when she was alone, when she prayed, and when she dreamed, a private world of thought and emotion. But here in Santa Monica, none of that truly mattered. What people saw was a young black woman working in a luxury restaurant, and Danielle had quickly learned that meant a barrage of assumptions, that she grew up in LA, that she only spoke English, that she was just there for the paycheck. She rarely corrected them. It simply wasn't worth the effort or the confused stares, like the one from a guest who, after overhearing her speaking to a friend from El Salvador, exclaimed, "I didn't know you spoke Spanish." When Danielle politely corrected him, "It's Mandarin," the man had blinked, as if she'd just claimed to walk on water. Within the restaurant's predictable rhythm, Kendra, her manager, reigned supreme. A former hostess turned front-of-house boss, Kendra smiled with her mouth, never quite with her eyes. She demanded neat uniforms, spotless menus, and servers who didn't ask questions. Danielle was, in an unspoken way, Kendra's favorite, never praised or promoted, but silently relied upon. She trained new staff, picked up extra shifts without fuss, and never caused drama. Her closest confidant was Milo, a half-Filipino bussier who had navigated the restaurant's unspoken rules for nearly a decade. Milo was funny, sharp, and quietly protective of Danielle. They bonded over late-night shift meals and shared stories of feeling invisible in places where they worked twice as hard to even be noticed. "You ever feel like we gotta wear invisible uniforms under these uniforms?" Milo had once mused, and Danielle had nodded in silent agreement, understanding the burden of being two people at once, one they saw and one they didn't. Yet, Danielle never allowed bitterness to fester. She had witnessed too much pain growing up to let small slights impede her progress. Her singular focus remained on doing her job impeccably, sending money to her grandmother, and saving for culinary school. She held quiet dreams, even if she kept them close. As for Charles Remington III, Danielle held no strong opinion of him. He was simply another wealthy man, rude but seemingly harmless. He arrived with different women each time, spoke down to the staff, and consistently left a precisely 15% tip, as if bestowing a great favor. Danielle never allowed his demeanor to penetrate her professional shield. Until that Thursday. It had been a slow shift, the rain having scared off the usual lunch crowd. Only 2 tables were occupied, a couple arguing over a prenup, and Charles, sitting alone, watching the rain streak down the glass window as if it personally offended him. Danielle hadn't noticed his gaze as she answered Popo's call. She hadn't thought it mattered. She spoke softly, kindly, not gossiping or being rude, just a granddaughter checking in on her beloved grandmother. But Charles didn't like it. And Kendra, well, Kendra was always 2 steps behind him, striving desperately to please him, as if he held the keys to the entire restaurant in his pocket. It was then that the silence began to feel heavy, pregnant with the unspoken, like something ominous was approaching, yet no one dared to acknowledge it aloud. The call had lasted maybe 30 seconds. Danielle, leaning against the wall near the espresso machine, just out of sight but close enough to respond if needed, had whispered a few words in Mandarin as her grandmother explained a mix-up with blood pressure pills at the pharmacy. Danielle reassured her gently, her tone soft, calm, almost musical, promising to call back during her break and reminding Popo to drink water. Then she'd hung up, slid her phone back into her apron, and headed straight toward table 6, where someone had just asked for a refill on sparkling water. But table 7, the VIP table, wasn't empty. Charles Remington III had seen everything. From his angle, he had a clear, unobstructed view of Danielle. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, his Japanese whiskey untouched, his face a stone-cold mask. Danielle didn't catch the way he stared, not at first. She was focused, moving from one table to the next, her rhythm unbroken. But Milo saw it. He stood by the bar, stacking napkins into neat squares, his eyes darting between Danielle and Remington like something wasn't sitting right. The air in the room shifted, subtle as a chill when someone turns off the heat without warning. Danielle came by Remington's table, ready with her usual calm professionalism. "Would you like another drink, Mr. Remington?" He didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her, measured her, then slowly, deliberately, he said, "Didn't know this place hired spies." Danielle blinked. "Excuse me. You speak Chinese now?" he asked, an edge in his voice that cut through the polite veneer of the restaurant. "That's what that was, right?" She paused, a flicker of bewilderment in her eyes. "Yes, I was speaking to my grandmother." He scoffed. "Right. Sure." Danielle didn't know how to respond. What was that supposed to mean? "If you're going to have secret phone calls during work," he added, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "maybe make sure the language is a bit more familiar." Danielle stiffened, her spine suddenly rigid. "I stepped off the floor, and it was a personal call. I'm sorry if it disturbed you." He didn't say anything else, just waved her off like she was a nuisance. She walked away slowly, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to escalate anything. Milo was watching her now, eyebrows raised. He mouthed, "What was that about?" Danielle shook her head. The rest of her shift passed like wet concrete, slow, heavy, uncomfortable. Remington didn't call her back, didn't complain. He just sat there for another 30 minutes, typed something on his phone, signed his check, and left without a glance. Danielle tried to pretend it was nothing. Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe he didn't like hearing a language he didn't understand. People like him, she knew, were fragile in strange ways. But when she clocked out, Milo caught her by the lockers. "That was weird, Dee," he said, his brow furrowed. "The way he looked at you. Like you were speaking some alien code." Danielle zipped up her hoodie. "People get weird when they can't label you." "You think he's going to complain?" She shrugged. "Let him." She didn't mean it like a dare, she meant it like a tired truth. Let him complain. Let him say whatever he was going to say. She had done nothing wrong. That night, Danielle cooked dinner for herself and called Popo back. They laughed about something small. Popo asked about the weather in California, and Danielle asked about the market in Taipei. She went to bed early and slept fine. But the next morning, her name wasn't on the shift schedule. She thought it was a mistake at first, maybe a mix-up, maybe she'd forgotten she wasn't scheduled. But when she walked up to Kendra's office, something was already off. The door was slightly open. Inside, Kendra sat with a folder in front of her, her eyes darting like she'd been rehearsing something. Danielle knocked. "Hey," she said, "I noticed I wasn't. Can you come in for a second?" Kendra said, not making eye contact. Danielle stepped in. The door shut behind her with a soft click, and that's when she realized this wasn't a scheduling error. It was something much worse. Danielle sat across from Kendra, her hands resting on her thighs, back straight. She wasn't nervous, at least not yet, but something about Kendra's evasive energy made the room feel smaller, heavier. Kendra cleared her throat and reached for the folder like it was a shield. "So," she began, "I wanted to have this conversation face to face because I respect you." That was the first red flag. People didn't say that unless something bad was coming. Danielle kept her face still, a professional mask. "Okay." Kendra hesitated. "We've been reviewing some concerns that were brought up regarding your conduct during yesterday's shift." Danielle blinked. "Conduct?" "Yes," Kendra said, opening the folder, though it was completely empty inside. "There was a guest who expressed discomfort with how you handled yourself. Specifically, the phone call you took during service hours." Danielle narrowed her eyes slightly. "I wasn't on the floor. I was behind the service wall. It was a quick personal call, nothing inappropriate." Kendra nodded like she was listening, but her expression didn't change. "It's not just about the call," she continued, her voice gaining a forced firmness. "It's about how it was perceived. There were concerns about professionalism, brand image, communication." Danielle frowned, a cold realization dawning. "Because I spoke another language." Kendra finally looked her in the eyes, and in that moment, everything was said: guilt, hesitation, fear. "It's complicated, Danielle," Kendra said, her voice dropping. "Some guests don't like when things feel unfamiliar. So I'm being fired because someone was uncomfortable hearing Mandarin in a restaurant that serves Sichuan pork belly and Thai curry." Danielle asked, her voice quiet, but laced with an incredulous intensity. Kendra flinched. "It's not personal, Danielle. You've been a great worker, but this is about maintaining a certain standard." Danielle felt heat rise in her chest, not anger, but the kind of deep, aching disappointment that doesn't come with yelling. It comes with silence, with looking someone in the eye and realizing they don't have the courage to tell the truth. "This came from Charles, didn't it?" Kendra paused, then finally, quietly, conceded. "He's a major investor. You know how these things go." Danielle exhaled through her nose. She didn't argue. "What was the point?" "You could have defended me," she said, her voice barely a whisper, thick with the weight of betrayal. "You could have told him I did nothing wrong." "I have a job too, Danielle," Kendra said quietly, looking away. "I don't make the big decisions." Danielle stood up, her composure unbroken, a quiet dignity radiating from her. You don't need to pretend you respect me, she said. Just hand me the paperwork. Kendra handed her a final check and a typed separation letter with the words failure to meet brand expectations in soft grey font. Danielle folded it in half without reading the rest. As she walked out of the office, Milo was waiting by the lockers. One look at her face and he knew. They really did it, he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Danielle nodded. Because of that phone call, I guess. Mandarin's a threat now. Milo leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the ceiling as if trying not to explode. They're not even hiding it, he muttered. He didn't like you talking in a language he didn't understand, and instead of checking him, they cut you loose. Danielle didn't reply. She was trying to keep her hands from shaking. People think racism is always loud, she said, her voice distant. They think it shows up wearing a hood or yelling slurs. But most of the time, it shows up in meetings like that. Smiling. Saying words like image and comfort while showing you exactly where they think you belong. She took off her apron for the last time, folded it neatly, and placed it on the bench. You sure you don't want to fight it? Milo asked. We could talk to HR, maybe go public. Danielle thought about it for a second. The fire in her chest said yes, but her heart was tired. I need a day to think, she said, as she stepped out into the parking lot. The California sun felt too bright, the same sun she had walked under hundreds of times before. Only now it hit different. Not because the world had changed, but because it hadn't. Danielle sat in her car for a while, didn't start the engine, just Saturday. Then, finally, she pulled out her phone and typed a short message to Popo. I got fired today. I'll call you later. Love you. She opened her photos, scrolled to a picture of her and Popo making dumplings last December, and stared at it until her heartbeat slowed. What Danielle didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this story was about to spread farther than anyone expected. She wasn't trying to start a war, she just wanted to breathe. The next morning, she stayed home. Popo called, worried, but Danielle assured her everything was fine, just a break. I needed one anyway, she'd said, not wanting her grandmother to worry over something so stupid, so unfair, so utterly exhausting. But Milo couldn't stay quiet. That same afternoon, he posted a message to a private Facebook group for service workers in the LA area. No names, no specific restaurant mentioned, just a simple paragraph. A co-worker of mine got fired yesterday. Not for being late. Not for being rude. Not for breaking rules. She answered a 30-second phone call in Mandarin in a restaurant that serves Asian fusion cuisine. The guest didn't like it. Now she's gone. Think about that. He didn't expect it to go anywhere. But by nightfall, it had already been screenshot, shared, and reposted on several public pages. Comments rolled in by the hundreds. That's disgusting. Sounds like they're scared of anything they can't control. This happened to my cousin too, different language, same story. And then someone guessed the restaurant. Then someone confirmed it. By the end of the next day, Juniper and Ash had gone viral for all the wrong reasons. Photos of the menu circulated, as did Yelp reviews dragging the place to pieces. Someone even found a clip of Charles Remington III speaking at a tech conference and shared it with the caption, "This the guy who gets women fired because they speak Chinese to their grandma." Danielle's phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists reached out, strangers DM'd her, offering support, advice, and a few conspiracy theories that made her laugh. But she didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. She needed time. Meanwhile, Kendra was scrambling. Staff were walking out mid-shift. A hostess quit on the spot. One of the chefs threw away a tray of duck confit and walked out without a word. Milo called Danielle that night. They're in full damage control mode, he said, his voice low with grim satisfaction. Management's trying to make us sign NDAs. Danielle raised her eyebrows. For what? They think you're going to leak their secret ingredients. They think we'll talk. Too late for that though, this thing's afire now. Danielle was silent for a beat. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. But you didn't do anything wrong either. She sat on her couch, staring at her ceiling. You think I should say something? I think you should do what feels right, Milo said, but just know people are listening now. The next morning, Danielle typed something. Not a rant. Not a sob story. Just the truth. My name is Danielle. I was fired last week from a restaurant in Santa Monica after a customer complained about me speaking Mandarin to my grandmother on the phone. I wasn't rude. I wasn't late. I wasn't unprofessional. I was just speaking to someone I love in a language that's part of me. That's all it took to lose my job. If you've ever been made to feel small because of who you are or how you speak or where you come from, I see you. She posted it on Twitter. Within 12 hours, it had 40,000 likes. She was invited to speak on podcasts. Local news outlets picked it up. An Asian American advocacy group reposted it, and then so did several Black media accounts. The overlap sparked a conversation bigger than Danielle could have imagined. Language, identity, power, fear. People told their own stories of being told to speak English at work, of being mocked for accents, of losing jobs because they didn't fit the culture. Danielle read every comment she could. Some made her cry. Some made her angry. But mostly, they made her feel less alone. Popo called again. I saw the news, she said in Mandarin. Are you okay? I'm okay, Danielle answered. Tired but okay. You always had a strong voice, even when you were small. Danielle smiled. It took losing my job to remember it. But the story wasn't finished yet. Not until Danielle faced the people who tried to erase her voice in the first place.